Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. I'm your host tonight. Jerry and Joe are taking the evening off. I'm John Fina. Thanks for joining. We're really excited to have you here for this session of On the Beat. Please find us on YouTube or anywhere you download your podcasts. We're on every podcast download platform network, as one might say. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We're thanking you for being here. We really are having an absolutely wonderful time doing this podcast. And as I said, tonight is On the Beat. And our special guest this evening is Jenna Cottrell from Wham 13, the weekend anchor in Rochester. Jenna also is the host of the Buffalo Plus podcast. You can find that on YouTube. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Hey, John. Thank you for having me. Also nailed the pronunciation of my last name, which not a lot of people do, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that goes back to when Coach Cottrell was with the Bills. So I've struggled with that. I questioned Joe when he said Cottrell, but I've been straightened out. So everybody there, thank you for joining in the comment section. We have Jenna Cottrell with us. If you have some comments, if you have some questions, please post them up there. Thanks for joining us. Jenna, I am of the opinion that we had a fantastic season. Didn't end the way we wanted it to, but I'm diehard, so I'm pretty good with it. This off season, though, has been pretty exciting, I would say. Brandon Beane's making some moves. There's been some curves in the road. Overall, are you satisfied, or are you feeling good about what's happening with the Bills?
I think I'll start with what I've really liked so far, and that was the signing of Joey Bosa. I think that for me, I was kind of waiting to see what the Bills would do during the free agency period. First things first, I do think that they did a good job re-signing some of their guys that we've talked about have been kind of the core of this team. Your Terrell Bernards, Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir. I really liked that. But the signing of Joey Bosa, I thought just to me said so much about this team still trying to address the defensive line, and then also bringing a guy that the ceiling and what he can be. Right. You've seen the talent, the 5-time Pro Bowler, all of these things. I know the injury history is there, but I love this because of it being a 1-year deal. Like, this is a 1-year prove it deal for him. And I think what you got from Von Miller, we knew where he was at, after the injury, it really derailed what he did in Buffalo. So I think for the Bills, they're trying to get an upgrade at the position. And I really like the star power that he adds. And I think he was talking about in his press conference how he finally feels healthy as well. And I think he talked about wanting to be in Western New York and how the decision kind of all came together quickly. But it's still not lost to me. Like, my first year on the job was when Rex Ryan was head coach. And it was like, who would want to come to Buffalo? What? And then now to have a brand name like Joey Bosa want to be in Western New York, I think that's pretty cool. And there's other stuff we can get into too. Obviously, the 2 suspensions on the D line, like that.
Oh, I got questions for you, Jenna. I got questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, where are you at? What do you think? I'm curious to know your opinion.
Well, I love this turnaround where people didn't recognize what a jewel Western New York is, and Buffalo was like not a destination. I didn't want to be there, but you put together a great front office, great coaching staff, Josh Allen, and some talent. And people are really finding that the city of Buffalo has a lot to offer. And to hear players talk about how they love it here and how the community embraces them. Yeah. I mean, that's the Buffalo that I knew and loved. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of winning is all it really takes to make, a great place more attractive to everybody around the league. And it elevates the reputation of Buffalo. So I'm with you. I'm thrilled to see that.
It's the old adage of, if you build it, they will come. And for so long, there was the building, the Jim Kelly, all those years that you talk about and like your career and what it meant. And then obviously the drought, and that kind of decimated the Buffalo sports seasons, Buffalo sports kind of feel in Western New York. But now to have Josh Allen, obviously coming off the NFL MVP, signing the new deal, McDermott and Brandon Beane, and just the culture that is there. And I remember early on when Sean McDermott was head coach at training camp at Fisher in Rochester, McDermott talked about how they did kind of a night where they would all tell their backstories and they would share, what made them want to be an NFL player, the struggles that got them there. And this was earlier on. This was probably 2017, 2018. And I remember being like, this is a professional football team. Like, this is not kumbaya. You know what I mean? You're a professional. You got to do your job. But I think Sean McDermott's like, no, I'm the last one laughing, because it's little things like that make Buffalo special and make players want to play here, want to come here, and want to stay here.
Right.
You've seen
Right.
throughout the
It's only a house until you add some great decor, and then it becomes a home. And then when you get players to open up, then they bond with each other and you get the best out of everybody.
Yeah.
I want to dovetail a little bit on your comments about Joey Bosa, which I totally agree with, right? I think there's still, ceiling left for him despite injuries, the 1-year deal, all that makes sense. Matt Milano's, the news on Matt Milano today.
Yeah.
Taking less money, reducing it to a 1-year, free agent next year. How do you, what's the psyche behind that move for Matt if you put yourself into his position? And how do you think that fits with the defensive philosophy has to change adding Joey Bosa?
Yeah, I think for this team, for Matt Milano, I mean, a guy that the Bills drafted, obviously, I can't believe he's, 30 years old. And it's really, it's crappy because of how injuries have kind of derailed what he could have been. Obviously, former All-Pro, all these things. But him taking less money today, them restructuring his deal to make him a free agent, I think says a lot about where this team is headed. And it's the tea leaves of the Bills post Matt Milano. Now, I think for Matt Milano, he's like, all right, I want to be in Buffalo. I want to be a part of this team. And I think he obviously still has belief in himself and what he can do out there. And I think if you look at kind of the tape at the end of the season, you saw him trending back to the player
Agreed.
that Bills fans know and love. And I think for Milano, it's that, all right, yeah, I'm going to take it on the chin because I haven't been out on the field. And then also, what can I do this season to help cement myself going forward? And I think the Bills would, them making it a 1-year deal says a lot about them being able to walk away next year if they don't feel like they need to re-sign him and he doesn't do enough. But I think you're right about the philosophy. Them also re-signing Terrell Bernard and like locking him up. And I think I love Terrell Bernard and what he adds to the Bills defense, the spine of this Bills defense. And I think, and you've probably seen this when you're watching games, he calls the defensive scheme, all that stuff. And him being like, all right, guys, you can see him physically moving players on the field and just the leader that he is. So yeah, I think the defense is going to look different in a season or two, which is something that I don't know we would have been talking about, but I think the Bills are making the business decisions that are necessary to get their team to where they want to go. But that's, what? It's so funny. I was younger. I was a younger reporter when they drafted Milano, and to see these guys kind of aging out. I think of like Deion Dawkins. I'm not saying he's there yet, but I'm oh my gosh.
I understand what you're saying. I was
was
reflecting more on Jenna. You're getting older, just like I am every day, one day at a time.
It's crazy. But I mean, I think that this team has gone through a transition and they will continue to go through them under, Josh Allen and what this team will look like. But I think we're about to, we had the Josh Allen as a rookie, Josh Allen with Diggs, now the Josh Allen after that era. But the defense has also changed and evolved throughout that as well.
Right. And, considering what's happening with Hoyt and more Hoyt than Ogunjobi, I think Matt Milano still has at least a very big 6-game run, to prove that he's become healthy. And I like this for him, a 1-year deal, and he has a terrific season. He might become another 1-year bill again and a 1-year bill again.
Yeah.
And, that way he has that ability, that flexibility to stay in a place that he knows to contribute to a team that, he really gets along with.
I'm only laughing because I would assume that's the case, but Matt Milano is very quiet.
Right. Nobody knows.
So nobody really knows, but I 1,000% agree that he seems so comfortable here. And you talk about how those suspensions could have an impact, and they will. And for him, the opportunity that exists in that space to really, hit the ground running and make an impression and make the Bills say, you know what, this guy, there's a reason he's been on this team and has been a huge piece of this team. So I am curious to see how that will play out. I want to know your thoughts on the suspensions. And as a former player, like, what you see that, what goes through your head?
Well, I think it's curious and probably pretty smart of Brandon Beane to hire or sign Hoyt knowing that there was a 6-game suspension coming, right? It's the right player, the right ability. I think
3-year deal. Yeah.
right. He looks like a 3-position guy, defensive end, linebacker in space, edge guy. So I like what he brings. And I think because of that suspension, it becomes an even better deal for a guy who's got more ceiling, more to play. So I like that one. With respect to Joby, I don't know if I blame the player so much for not being forthcoming. I mean, you only get one run at this game, a couple of 3 contracts, if you will. What really bothers me is how the timeline works out, that this doesn't become obvious and known to every team that somebody on the free market has violated the PED policy.
Yeah.
So look, we're stuck with the guy. I think that 6-game sideline suspension, number one, if he participates in training camp, stays healthy, and then he's 6 games out, I think you really build up an appetite to get into the game to prove your worth. So given that, 17 games is a long time, he might be hitting stride right at the right time coming in at game 7. I don't love it initially because I think we need a little bit more help on defense right now, but availability when he's there and his availability and ability, I think will benefit the defense, game 7 going in.
Yeah.
Less stoic than Matt Milano, the beloved Matt Milano. I thought, Jenna, that the Kaiir Elam departure was pretty amicable, pretty quiet, pretty, hey, mistakes on both sides, weren't the player that we expected you to be. And then I read Kaiir's comments about Buffalo now that he's in Dallas. I didn't take too much of it.
Yeah.
We don't have to spend a lot of time here, but what's your overall take?
Yeah. I mean, I think overall, talk about this past Friday. Like, Beane had to say that there were 2 suspensions on the D line, and then that he ended up trading away a former first-round pick that he traded up to go get. Like, I think that was kind of, not everything is going to be perfect. Obviously, you're not making these decisions in a vacuum. But I was happy for both ways to kind of split and have fresh starts. I think for Kaiir, they obviously drafted Christian Benford, that same draft class, and Benford outperformed him at every step of the way. And for Kaiir, obviously they made the defensive backs coaching change. Like, the Bills made decisions to help Kaiir, and I think a fresh start was just needed on both sides. I know the comments you're talking about. I agree. I didn't think. I think Kaiir said essentially, like, in Buffalo, I was put in the back seat or something along those lines. I didn't take that as shade, because to me, it's like, what is he going to say? Like, he and McDermott and Beane have talked ad nauseum about how much of a worker Kaiir is. And honestly, from my vantage point, when we would go into the Bills field house for interviews, there would be Kaiir Elam still on the field working. So I saw what they were talking about. But I think for the player, it's just, a new opportunity, just a new spot. I think in that newness will be good for him. And I think for the Bills, like, them signing Dane Jackson, I honestly already think is an upgrade, if we're being honest. And that's not shade at Kaiir. I just think that Dane has played decently well, knows the system, and, like, has performed at a higher level. Like, I think Kair's ceiling is higher, but what Dane Jackson has been able to do on the field for Buffalo, the floor is Dane Jackson's floor is higher as well. So it makes sense to me.
I agree. And we're going to bounce right back into that, but I'm going to remind everybody that you're on the beat on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. Tonight's incomparable guest at Jenna Cottrell on X, the Buffalo Plus podcast, weekend anchor for Wham 13 in Rochester. Very insightful. Thank you for joining. Everybody in the comments, appreciate you being here. hit the like button, subscribe. Thanks so much. Jenna, you we're talking about the cornerback position. It begs the question. We've got 3 cornerbacks rostered right now.
Mhm.
Holy smokes, we're in the middle of free agency. Talent's being deleted, being signed elsewhere. We got the Stingley deal
Yeah.
that's going to affect the Benford deal. It's a big soup. How do we strain it out? What are we left, and where do we go from here?
I've never heard that. I have never heard that. I like that.
I just
'Cause
made it up.
there's a lot going on. You talk about
There's a lot.
There's a lot going on because you talk about that Derek Stingley Jr. deal, and like every day it feels like that passes. It's like, oh, Christian Benford's probably going to get more expensive and more expensive. And look, I think Christian Benford is a phenomenal player. He's been everything and more than expected, a former 6th round pick. Like going into the final year of his contract, I wouldn't be shocked if he's like, hey, I want to see what the market is. I never judge a player when they want to do that because as you know, as everyone knows, the NFL, you have a very short period of time for your playing career. And if guys want to maximize the amount of money that they could make, I don't blame them. I don't judge them for that. So if Christian Benford, I wouldn't be shocked if, things play out in terms of he doesn't get the number he quite wants and then he wants to test free agency. That's totally fine with me. If I'm Brandon Beane, I'm obviously trying to lock up a guy that I think has been phenomenal in that position. So the number, I mean, with Stingley just resetting everything, it continues to get higher and
Right.
the guaranteed money. And that is kind of something that the longer things, I don't know when we'll hear about it. Do you expect them? I'm trying to think in my mind if I expect them to extend him because I think they will, but I'm also like, what would that number come in at? And what does that mean for other guys?
So as a guy who bet on himself, so I
Mhm.
didn't take the extension. I played it out.
Yeah.
And it worked out for me. I think the dollars now are such that let's just say he signs and he's, average over the life of the contract at 27, which I think is about 6.5 less than Stingley got, somewhere in that neighborhood. There is something to be said now for the cost of living and that type of money compared to 1996 when, cornerback might be making $4 million a year. So, from my perspective, if the ring is important and I think this is the best place for me to get it and I'm not chasing the dollars, I want to extend because I think you get generational dollars signing the extension.
Mm-hmm.
If you play it out, if they come to an impasse at loggerheads in negotiation, the risk of injury is high.
Yeah.
And we've all seen that. And hey, Benford has had a few injuries of his own. So where that plays into his mind, I think that he will resign. That's my thinking. And now the question is, how does that work with the Cook deal, which sort of really kind of slides into this? I don't think there are a lot of free agent options out there. Mm-hmm. So I think the Bills are motivated to extend.
Yeah. That's
and then you fold the Cook situation in with the salary cap. We got a little relief from Matt Milano redoing his deal. So I think they both extend. I think Benford extends, and I think you have Cook play it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly fair. It's funny. If you were to ask me going into this last season, like, do they give James Cook or even entertain the idea of giving James Cook an extension? I'd be like, meh. Like, because I think just what he was able to do this past season and how much he progressed, I feel like just the player that he became. I mean, other than Josh, it was like, what can James Cook do? And I think that was intentional with the way the Bills took a step back talent wise on offense. But now it's like, you see, I think of that touchdown in the AFC Championship game by James Cook. And I'm like, that dude is a baller. And I know that NFL GMs don't usually love to pay the position. Obviously, Saquon is a different story. But man, I just see that and I'm like, you have a weapon on offense. What could you do? How can you play that out? But then I think about Christian Benford. And this is why I'm not an NFL GM. It's because of decisions like this. But no,
right. I mean, you can't wait. You can't do anything right. Brandon Beane comes to the microphone with the Kyer Elam news and two guys with a ped suspension, and that microphone looks more like a grenade, and you got to sit in front of that thing, and you're just waiting for Jenna Cottrell to just come at you, and you're like, let me stay calm in the face of Jenna. I mean, the talons, the people are out. The knives are out.
I know. Well, I think realistically, I do think they'll probably look to extend Benford more than Cook, just because I think that they feel confident that they can find a guy. Like, it's a corner is just such a coveted position to find a guy and to have drafted him. I could see that, but
I totally agree with you.
You want to keep Cook too.
I'm gonna layer it with just a little bit more. I think we have a top 5 to 7 offensive line. I think the formations we've been using with Alec Anderson and Reggie Gilliam late in the year put us in a position where above average running backs are going to do really well in this offense. I don't think Ty Johnson is the guy really from scrimmage, but we've seen what he does as a receiver.
Yeah.
And Ray Davis is beginning to shine. And I think they learned their lesson. The Bills did. And it was my opinion all along that his rookie year, James Cook did not get the ball enough.
Yeah.
So that's why I lean that way. If you think by talent and scheme up front that you can make a guy better, then you bet on your offensive line and Joe Brady and Cromer, and you punt and see how it works out next year.
I also think too, like, if you're paying James Cook to be the guy, you're paying James Cook to be the guy all the time. And the way the Bills, third down backs, like, they've used Ty Johnson in that role. Obviously, Ray Davis gets some carries as well. Like, you would have to pay him to be the volume guy. And I don't know with this Bills offense if that's how they want to do it. So I think there's a lot of, variables that go into this, but I just seeing that in my mind, I'm like, that touchdown and at Arrowhead, I was like, that was incredible.
It was exhilarating.
Oh my! I mean, how he got into the end zone, he was not going to be denied. But yeah, there's
and guys get that way when they feel at home, when they love where they are, when they love their teammates and the community that they play for. And how could they not? You're listening to Jenna Cottrell.
Nailed it. Yeah.
On the beat on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. Thanks to everybody in the comments. Richard Rush, Daniel Gowries, Tracy, Bella, John Robert. Thanks for showing up. Jenna, I'm going to go there, even though I don't want to. I don't want to think about it. I don't know who brought it up. I don't want to hear about it, but I got to ask you about it.
Oh, okay.
Stephon Diggs, Instagram, coming back to Buffalo, 1-year deal. Give it to me straight, Jenna.
The amount of texts I got from my friends that were like, wait, Diggs is coming back? And I had to do like wait, what? Adam Scheffler or whatever on Twitter saying that. There's no way. There's just, to me, the way things ended last season, the trade, the move that you made, the hit that you took to have him not be on your roster, him now being a year older, coming off the ACL surgery. Yeah. I think for Diggs, it might have been maybe a wake-up call of like, he obviously went to the Houston team. They reworked his deal, kind of more of a bet on yourself 1-year thing, him tearing his ACL. Like, I think it was a little bit of humble pie.
And maybe Christian Benford is looking at that. But I got to tell you, I might consider Stephon Diggs coming back if he's got a suitcase with a $5 million cash refund rolling up in the carry-on, up to Bean's office, hand it off to Pagula, cash in the bank. Don't tell the IRS.
All right. Where can you see? Think of this. Stephon Diggs to the New England Patriots. It makes so much sense.
It does. I just don't see him being the player that he was. The things he does with his body might be part of
I agree. I agree. I don't think he will be the level of player he once was because of that ACL, with him being older, all these things. But for him, I mean, Mac Hollins is probably the best receiver on the Patriots right now. And Diggs obviously has the pedigree. He has the veteran leadership, and he would also get to play the Bills twice a season.
Yeah,
right.
It's not going to happen. You mentioned something earlier, Jenna, and I thought this was an interesting comment. We've been talking about it since the roster was set back in August or September of last year, that we took a step backward in the wide receiver room with talent. yet we still were in the top 2, if not number 1, in scoring offense.
Yes.
So adding Josh Palmer, adding Laviska Shenault, I think only improves us, and we're focusing on the defensive side of the ball. But it's so funny how just 7-8 months ago, we were having little mini panic attacks about the wide receiver room. So I trust Brandon Beane. I trust Joe Brady. I trust Josh Allen. And I think they put something spectacular together last year. And I like to believe, because I'm a homer, I'm not going to lie, I think that we have an opportunity for a repeat. Jenna, I've got we talked about Cook a little bit already. We covered the defense. I got to dive in just a little bit on where you think holes remain, specifically on defense, how we plug them, and if there are any personalities you might not have dug into the draft, so you could just kind of give us a blanket by position, what you think is going through Beane's mind. And the caveat there is, any more moves in free agency left that we can make?
I think kind of Beane alluded to the fact with the Larry Ogunjobi thing of how, with them finding out about the PEDs and him essentially saying, realistically reading through the tea leaves of like, yeah, there really wasn't much out there in terms of that position. So we decided to sign him. So I think for this team, it's funny how many times we talked about them drafting a D lineman. I could see them doing that. I could see them looking at corner. What are they going to do with Rasul Douglas? I don't think Dane Jackson is going to be your starting corner. I think he's more of a depth piece. Who knows? I think they do need to figure out what they want to do with that other spot. And yeah, I just think for where this team is at, and you're right, like I honestly need to do so much more looking at the draft. But when you talk about the suspensions, when you talk about just the level of play that they want to see from the D-line, I could see them taking a guy high once again. Honestly, I know you said defense, but also I could see them drafting another wide receiver. Like I think wide receiver, corner, defensive lineman, you could argue safety again, just with, I know they have the DeMar bringing him back. What do they see in Cole Bishop? I don't like there are questions that will be played out throughout the spring. And this is when you learn a lot about how the Bills feel about their roster too. I think that's also important to note because sorry, what were you saying?
No, I'd say I completely agree with you. And, piggybacking on the Rasul Douglas conversation, I think Brandon Beane is playing this perfectly. Just let the market bear it out. And once that happens, give the guy a fair deal, bring him back. And I still think that, we keep that first round pick. We are defensive tackle, followed by cornerback, followed by maybe wide receiver, safety. But I just don't see, for me, the wide receiver coming until, I think we have a number of picks in round 2, none in 3, and a couple in 4, or a few in 3 and none in 4.
Here's my thing. They have 10 picks.
10. So there's a lot of trading.
They're not going to take 10 guys, obviously. No. Like the 10 guys aren't going to make this roster, but package those up. Get the guy you really want. Get the guy that will fit and will be an immediate impact. Because I look at other teams around the NFL and their rookies immediately make an impact. And we've seen it before with the Bills, obviously, but I want to see that more.
I don't disagree with you. And then there's a group of people who'd look in your face and say, we traded up to get Kaiir Elam. That was the guy we wanted, and it backfired. You look across the league, across probably the past 30 years, and guys that were expected to excel and play a nice long career in the NFL didn't. And then there are the Christian Benfords of the world. It's really a crapshoot. And think that you just know everything about a guy and how he's going to fit and how he's going to perform. You're lying to me and you're lying to yourself. And I think people just have to grasp that. When I get this question all the time, and you're going to get it too. How did the Bills do in the draft? And I look him in the face and I say, I'll let you know in a couple of years.
Yeah, time will tell. I will say, if I had my way, I would say essentially give away some of that draft capital for a bona fide guy. I say bona fide, right? Wrong. The guys make fun of me, but I don't know. Maybe it's like a New England accent, but I'm saying I would rather go for the sure thing. I'm way more the team, hey, sign a big guy in free agency, try to make a trade for something and give away some of those picks, because I just think I'd rather have a sure thing. But that being said, you're right. Like, the Bills have failed when they have not failed. They have in some moments failed. They traded up for Kyer Elam. They traded up for Dalton Kincaid. I'm not saying Dalton Kincaid is Kyer Elam, but I think it'd be safe to say that you've wanted to see more out of Dalton Kincaid, especially this past season. But I want them to make some. Last year, waiting till round 2. Are you kidding me? I was like, the amount of snacks I ate, John, like the amount of coffee I had and snacks I ate, I can't do that.
Snack? I mean, was it a variety?
Oh,
what
yeah.
were you
First of
digging
all,
into?
the Bills definitely take care of us. Shout out them. They have like all the potato chips, all that stuff, but they had Wegmans chocolate chip cookies, which
Ooh.
are elite. And they
Oh.
had soda, which I don't normally drink soda.
But you
there was
have to.
coffee.
It goes into the evening. You got to
Yeah. It's like the fun fanfare. And then I actually always tweet out on game days of like, I like to have potato chips, like the kettle cooked chips, and then put M&Ms on top of those. Little salty, sweet.
I'm the same way at the movies. It's popcorn and Raisinets. And
Okay.
Don't hate. Don't hate.
Okay, no, that sounds good.
Oh,
the movie theater popcorn, that is top tier. But yeah, so they take care of us, but I can't be waiting till day 2 again, because I was like so sugar high. It was dangerous.
Oh, well, you have to report on every round, Jenna. It can't just be our beloved Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Everyone in the audience there, everybody listening on the podcast live or at home, recorded, thank you for coming. It has been On the Beat with Jenna Cottrell on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. You can find Jenna on X at Jenna Cottrell. You can also dig up her podcast on Buffalo Plus Podcast on YouTube. She does a great job. She's also on 13 Wham Weekend Anchor in Rochester, New York, doing a fantastic job covering our Bills. Jenna, I just had a great time hanging out with you tonight.
Thank you.
Can you give me your final thoughts, final commentary, and we'll wrap this up and get everybody back to their families?
Yeah, I think there's still holes on the roster, but of course there are, because it's March. And I think if you're a Bills fans, you should be encouraged by where this team is at and the talent that they've added. There's still more work to be done, of course, but I think already where you see this team now, when we were at this point last season, I was a lot more worried. And I think the bar has already been set higher, and we saw how last season played out, but I think they've added some really nice pieces that can be a great complement for what this team is trying to build.
Well said, Jenna. I know you don't do the Overreaction Buffalo Go Bills at the end, but you might have a favorite quote or a favorite saying. And if you do, now's the time on your show, On the Beat with Jenna Cottrell. Final comment.
John, you put me on the spot. I don't know.
On the spot. I'm sorry.
Please check out the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. How about that?
Beautiful. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Again, John Fina on behalf of Jerry Ostrowski at Ostrowski_Big O on X and at Joe Miller Wired on X. Thank you for coming. I'm John Fina at John Fina on X to the On the Beat show, and I will close it out to the Bills Mafia with a great big Go Bills.